Show. It's going to be the RSN All Area Football Show. We're going to talk about honorable mentions, second teams, and first teams. But of course, we couldn't do this show without the man who has always sat beside me, the man who's actually made this list, has done amazing research over not just the past weeks, but the past months, ever since week 1 in this high school football season. Mike DeWan, we got Zach Zanelli producing today's show. But it's going to be a lot of fun. Of course, as you amazing viewers or listeners know, football never dies or ends here in the region. I know we're in basketball and wrestling season, but nevertheless, it's still football season here in the region. We've got a great list with a lot of great names. It's going to be fun to really reflect on a lot of these kids' seasons. All these kids played an incredible season, no matter if it's honorable mention, second team, or first team. All these kids should be proud of what they've accomplished this past year. So we'll do our honorable mention, we'll do our second team, and then we'll end the show with our first team. So while you're watching along right now, we hope you can comment maybe some support you have for somebody on one of these teams. Maybe it's a grandson, a son of your own, or even a daughter. We have a girl kicker in one of our lists. The question,
spoiler alert.
Yeah, spoiler alert. Question is that honorable mention, second team, or first team? Nevertheless, we'd love to hear and see your support for all these amazing high school football players over the year, because they dedicated basically their lives for the past 3 months, for you to go out Friday nights and watch them play football. Right. Enough from me about what we're going to do. Let's do it. Let's go over our honorable mention for the football season. We'll start with the quarterbacks first. We got Matt Kuntz from Hanover Central. This quarterback was as dual threat as it gets, although Hanover Central didn't get the ending they wanted to. Matt Kuntz was as one of the best quarterbacks in the area. He can throw it, he can run it, and he really was a leader out on that field for the Wildcats. Then you got Johnny Sorensen for the Hobart Brickies, another great quarterback, transferred in from another school. So it's always hard coming in as a transfer and kind of getting that offense down to the nail. But Johnny Sorensen did a really good job. Another dual threat quarterback, did a lot with his arms, but had a couple of games where he really did a lot of work with his legs. We have Holland Harris from Hammond Morton. This was another guy I was really impressed with. These quarterbacks are so good. It just tells you how loaded these lists are. You have Colton Fouts of a Calumet Christian, another kid who he was on our top 10 in passing yard leaderboard basically throughout the whole season. He had himself a terrific one. And then you got Caleb Klimzak out of Wheeler. This quarterback, he really came out of nowhere. In the beginning of the year, we weren't really talking about them. That was when Wheeler was kind of on that rough stretch.
0-3.
But when Wheeler went on that winning streak to end the season, it was really Caleb Klimzak who, came out of the shadows and really shined as a quarterback and helped the Wheeler Bearcats, win their first GSSC South title for the first time. I believe it was 2015 was the last time.
It's been a minute.
And, first year head coach, Nick Testa was under him. So, two guys really trying to learn the system, and Caleb Klimzak, who's going to be there another year. Really great to see what he, did on the football field against Wheeler. But, Mike, a great list. You have 5 quarterbacks here who we've talked about, on Region Football Weekly and the kickoff shows throughout the whole year. These were names that really deserve to be on this list, and it just tells you how good these guys are. It's a tough list to make, and the region is filled of a great and amazing quarterbacks.
Yeah, this whole list, going through this whole honorable mention, the way kind of our first and second teams are kind of sought out, it's not 2 quarterbacks at the quarterback position. It's 1 quarterback. You're on first team, you're on second team, or you end up on the honorable mention list. So it's very competitive with how we kind of got this formatted out, and that's why we had to list a bunch of these quarterbacks for honorable mention. A lot of these guys, again, we were talking about every single Friday night. Matt Kuntz won the NCC Offensive Player of the Year. Of course, you know about Johnny Sorensen and how he's kind of a sought-after recruit as we speak. Holland Harris is going to be fantastic next year. Again, only a junior, and he's already getting D1 looks. Colton Fouts and Caleb Klimzak will also be back next year. So as we kind of list through these names, you're going to run into some all-state guys that we're going to talk about. It's just such a competitive list, and how we kind of have these things, kind of formatted out. we're doing only 11 on offense or 11 on defense. We're not doing 15 aside. It's competitive, and this is a very talented honorable mention team, is what we could say.
Absolutely. Let's move to the running backs now. Starting it off will be a Mustang from Munster, Daniel Askedon. This guy was one of the best running backs in the area. Definitely was leading in yards, up there in touchdowns, and the way Munster ran the ball and really fit this Mustang wishbone offense perfect. The way he was able to execute out there. Yeah, Marco Cash out of KV. This was another team who, look, they had their ups and downs, but really caught heat at the end of the season. And Marco Castro played a vital part in that hot success. I mean, you go back to the playoff time, they took New Prairie to overtime. That was a New Prairie team that blew out Hobart in the first round, but you go to the second round of sectionals, KV takes that game to overtime. Right. So, Marco Castro is a huge part of that offense. You have Amarian Yabrow out of Gary Westside. That was, what they call themselves over there, RBU. He was huge for them as well this year. There was so many guys in that running back room that you could talk about Amarian Yarbrow. He really stood out, not just because of how fast, how quick he was, but the yards per carry. That was really something big for him. He was another guy who really just came out of nowhere in the end of the year. And when we looked at those yards per carry, I mean, there were multiple games where it was 9 yards per carry, 10 yards, 12 yards per carry, which is just unreal. And he had himself a great season. You got Jackson Lawson from Griffith, the junior running back, really helped lead Phil Mason's first season into something promising. You go to that Griffith team, they only had one senior on that squad. So for Jackson Lawson, the junior running back, and I had the pleasure of watching Griffith actually play against River Forest.
Right.
Jackson Lawson's a beast. And, one of the things I thought of was this kid's here to stay, and this kid is going to have a bright future with the Griffith Panthers, and I know Phil Mason is going to be excited to have him for another year. And then there's Jaden Ortiz from Wheeler as well. We talk about that passing attack a lot, obviously, with Caleb Klimzak and Bryce Compton, but don't forget about the junior running back, Jaden Ortiz. He had a big game, actually, against Griffith. We had the pleasure of broadcasting that one. A guy who's really quick. He's got a lot of muscle. He's going to run right through you. But Jaden Ortiz was a huge part as well in that Wheeler team that went on that late run and got that division title. But really another good list of running backs. All these guys, we've talked about these guys so much throughout the year. Right. Askedon, you're obviously very familiar with that Munster system. Yarbrow is somebody who we talked about. Gary Westside was in the top 10 multiple times. I remember when KV was, I believe, number 10 in our rankings for one time. You had Griffith, who was really treading up in the right way. And then you have Wheeler. We keep talking about a team that really caught heat at the end, and it was because of their offense.
Yeah, this running back room is the most competitive, I think, on this list. When we kind of talk about our second and first team guys, it's tough to find somebody to place over them, but nonetheless, these guys were fantastic all year. Askedon's an all-state guy. A lot of these guys had some of the best rushing yard seasons in program history, if not the best.
Yeah.
Again, some of these guys, Marco Cash, we're going to be talking about next year. Jackson Lawson, Jaden Ortiz. This was a very tough running back room, and even if not for a couple, injuries or, slow starts, some of the top running backs in the area, some of these guys could have been left off this list. That's how fantastic the running back position is in Northwest Indiana, and again, we're looking forward to see some of these names pop up next year.
Yeah, let's move over to our pass catchers. We'll go with Isaiah Kish from Calumet Christian to start it off. He was quarterback, made the honorable mention list as well, and Colton Fouts. You have Rocco Bartolomeo. He was huge for Matt Kuntz as well. He played a pivotal role in that slant position. And, we covered a Hanover Central game, and he had a lot of huge catches as well. But he's also a great defensive player,
right?
As well. He played two positions, and that's never easy to do. Hunter Noonan out of Boone Grove, when you have Mark Rowland throwing to you, you need a big-time receiver, and Hunter Noonan was a huge guy for him. Then you have Javon Lawrence, another guy from Calumet Christian. Very pivotal list right there. And you got Caleb Short from River Forest, and you have Garrett Lewis as well. And it is hard for the pass catchers to make these kinds of lists because, quarterbacks aren't, the main thing when it comes to high school football in Northwest Indiana. It's the running backs. You mentioned it. All these running backs, have had, their best seasons ever. So when it comes to the pass catchers, you can tell how good they are making this list because there's not many that can do what they're doing out there. They play a key role in the offense. And, they're not the only ones that are trying to catch a football. When it's a running back, they're the only ones carrying the football.
Yeah.
But when it's coming to these pass catchers, there's two, maybe three other guys fighting to get open and catch that football as well. So, for these guys to stand down or honorable mention, and you can tell because all these receivers had great quarterbacks.
Yeah, we're going to mention probably a lot of those quarterbacks later on this list if we haven't mentioned them already in the honorable mentions. But, yeah, Kish, of course, a byproduct from Colton Fouts and what they do at Calumet Christian. Then Rocco Bartolomeo, of course. Kuntz as well. He spreads the ball around a little bit. He was kind of that number one guy at Hanover. Hunter Noonan, I mean, he's not going to be the last Boone Grove receiver we're going to see on this list. I'm going to spoil that right now. Javon Lawrence, big play threat for Calumet. He was a first team all conference for the GSSC. Caleb Short, again, not the only River Forest guy you're going to see on here. There's a lot of, again, that GSSC especially, there's a lot of kind of two-way guys that we have to stick them somewhere, whether it's at receiver, DB, wherever they're playing, they're making impacts in that conference. And then finally, Garrett Lewis was an all-state guy this year. Again, he was kind of that H-back role for Chesterton. Really did all the dirty work for them, but he made a bunch of plays this whole year. So
yeah, let's move over to the linemen now. We got a lot of guys on this one.
D lineman, O lineman, that's the big boys.
We'll start with Deion Smith, the Ball State commit for Michigan City. We had we covered him a little bit against that Lake Central game, and then we've had a couple of other Michigan City games. That guy is a beast. Whether he's offensive lineman or defensive lineman, that guy will both those right through. I do not want to be matched up with him. Roshan McGee out of the Maryville Pirates, they had a really great season. Roshan McGee was a huge part for them. You have Ben Ruda out of Lowell, Hunter Anthony out of Boone Grove. You have Luke Donsbach out of Andrean, Logan Afantis. You have Tanner Young from Valpo. You have Mitch Krolkowski. I'm trying to get all these names right. You have Seth Renfuss, Kayla Parker, and Nate Kalk out of the Crown Point Bulldogs, 6A state runner-ups. But a lot of men on this list as well. You mentioned them, not just defensive line, but offensive line as well. And that makes it tricky because there are a lot of, just like kind of receivers, there's a lot of guys playing these positions. You have 5 linemen. You have 2 or 3 defensive linemen, whatever kind of scheme you like to run on defense. So, it's really hard to stand out in those positions because, obviously you want to win as a team. But in terms of individual stats and making these types of lists, you're going for those individual stats. You're going for those tackles for loss or just a regular tackle or a sack or maybe a forced fumble or a fumble recovery. So, this kind of a list, when we talk about, multiple guys in these positions, it really gets this list more elusive because you're really fighting out there with other guys. And like I said, they're all teammates and everything, but to make these individual lists, you have to find a way to stick out in some way.
It was a lot of film watching over here a little bit. We kind of had to watch some film, and I got to give credit to the coaches. We kind of reached out to all the coaches in the area, and especially we kind of knew who the skill guys were going to be going into making this list, but the linemen, it's tough. There's not stats for pancake blocks, and I mean they have it on Max Preps and all that stuff, but coaches barely update it. And I want to give a shout out to the coaches that reached back out to us and kind of threw us some names out there to kind of watch film on. And again, these guys are some of the best. Again, Deion Smith, of course, he's going to Ball State actually as a D lineman, but I mean he's a solid O lineman as well. A lot of these guys offer a lot. Of course, Roshan McGee is a name that sticks out. He All-State guy last year. Again, he's tough, man, and he's not going to be the last Maryville D lineman. That's a stacked D line, and we'll get kind of more into that as we go. Ben Ruda, again, it was fun watching his film. Hunter Anthony, another Boone Grove guy that kind of does things both ways. Donsbach is solid. Afantis was All-State for Munster, one of 3 All-State guys. Kind of led that Munster rushing attack. Tanner Young, again, a name that was thrown out. Krolakowski as well. A lot of these coaches, again, looking out for these guys. Those are people you circle when you go into that week, and they kind of give your offensive or defensive coordinator nightmares. So, again, shout out to these big boys, and, again, some of them we'll see next year. So
yeah, absolutely. Let's move over to the linebackers now. Alec Ponce out of Calumet, Jackson Smith out of Wheeler. You have Sammy Ampliotis out of Valparaiso, Kyle Friel out of LaPorte, Julian Ramirez out of Bishop Knoll, Chris Gonzalez out of Boone Grove, Jalen Arnold out of Morton, and then you have Drew Correll out of Crown Point. And it's another tough list because I'll tell you one thing, Sammy Ampliotis, I had the pleasure of calling a Valpo game and actually watching them. That's a kid that can fly around the football field, and he was really one of the best linebackers I was able to watch, in the region this year. And so it just tells you how many great athletes and how many great players are on this list. Kyle Friel, he was a huge part for LaPorte, although they didn't have the season they wanted to. If there was one consistent piece, one consistent player going out there, giving it his all and really putting out, the best football he could, it was Kyle Friel. That guy was crazy all over the field, making great tackles, and he kept LaPorte in some games. Although they didn't get the win, he did keep them in those games. Chris Gonzalez was another guy out of Boone Grove. We get so caught up in the high-flying numbers of Mark Rowland in this offense, but let's not forget, this defense was also very stifling. I believe in terms of all the teams we cover here in Northwest Indiana, they were tops in terms of tackles for loss, and Chris Gonzalez was a big part of that. And Drew Corral, obviously when you mention the Crown Point defense, everybody deserves like a gold medal for the way they played out there.
Plenty of Crown Point guys on
this
list,
and
that's for sure.
Drew Corral was a huge part in that Crown Point defense. So congratulations to all those linebackers.
Yeah, I know a good linebacker when I see one, I'd like to say. It was a lot of fun scouting these guys, and I kind of know what I was looking for kind of playing that position in the past. And again, these guys are tackle machines. We kind of know some of these names from last year, see what they did. Alex Ponce is a tackle machine. He had another season over the century tackle mark. And a lot of these guys, again, some of their teammates are on a team higher. It's just, those guys are fighting for tackles, especially Ampliotis. We're going to talk about his teammate a little bit later. And then Kyle Friel also. He had a nice running mate, and I think R.J. Barnes was the other LaPorte linebacker. So it's again, very talented position. You got to kind of find guys to kind of stuff those talented running backs you have in the area, and it was fun picking these guys out for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's move over to defensive backs. Tyne Venical out of Wheeler. You have Dylan Bowen out of Hanover Central. Nathan, I'm going to mispronounce this already.
Ujak Leah. Please forgive us. I don't know. It's a tough one.
We're going to need a pronunciation guide next year. Kyle Sabowski out of Bishop Knoll. You have Griffin Van Tischlet. And then Jacob Straminsky. It's another great list for those defensive backs. Tyne Venical, great player, two-way player. He played a receiver and defensive back for Wheeler. Dylan Bowen, the brother of Drake. But I'll tell you one thing, Dylan Bowen has done a great job making a name for himself. A very young player. Go back to the playoffs. He had a game with 3 interceptions. And in that game against West Lafayette, they actually had an interception as well. So he had 4 interceptions in his last 2 games he played. He was huge for that team. And then you have Griffin Van Tischler. I mean, like you said, we're going to keep mentioning Crown Point guys when we see them. And he's another guy who had himself a great year on a great defense. And then Jacob Straminsky, another great player on Hanover Central. This was a Wildcat defense, like we said. We get caught up in the offense, and we'll talk about some of their offensive players in a little bit. But this is still a great defense, and you mentioned Dylan Bowen. But now you have Jacob Straminsky. He was pivotal in that game against West Lafayette, although they did not get that win. He really did a good job keeping that offense pretty silent for that first half. They were leading. So for Hanover Central, for them to get represented by 2 defensive backs just tells you how good that room was for them.
Yeah, it's a lot of ball hawks here, a lot of interceptions between these guys. And I know Venical and Bowen are both sophomores. Again, they might find themselves on this list or higher in the next 2 years. Again, I think Van Tichel's also a sophomore. Again, we have a lot of guys. Again, if you're on one of these talented teams, like Venical's on Wheeler, Bowen, of course, on Hanover, and Tichel's on CP. I mean, you guys are all kind of deserved of your flowers, and you guys are all fighting to make plays. There's so much talent on those defensive units, and that's why we're seeing so much of these 3 teams. So.
Yeah, and now let's move to my favorite position, and of course, my opinion is always right. The most important position of them all. It's the special teams.
Overlooked for sure.
Can't forget about special teams.
You got
PJ Kusick out of Indrain. You got Owen Burns out of Morton. We mentioned that we have a girl on this list, which is awesome to see. Emmy Doty out of Hanover Central. She had to kick a lot of extra points. Like, there were a lot of times where Hanover Central scored, and, she was kicking them right through the upright. She had herself a really good season. Special teams are always important. I feel like we need to talk about them more. They're always, whether it's punting, kicking, even you want to go long snapper maybe. I mean, holders.
We got a long snapper
on
the list.
Long snapper, holders, blockers, whatever you want to call it. Special teams, when you count up the points, it is very important. If it's mixed extra points, if it's missed field goals, or if they're punts that aren't going far. We've seen a lot of great punters. Over this past year, one of my favorite punters we'll talk about in a little bit just because I had the pleasure of calling his game. But, punters are important. Kickers are important. They're very important people. I think we need to stress that out.
I agree. The field position's, of course, a big thing. And, again, shout out to these 3. Again, Cusick is a solid piece for Andre, and he's kind of starting to pick up traction, I think, in the recruiting game, and he's going to be back for the 59ers next year. Owen Burns, only a freshman for Munster. I believe he broke a program record, I think, consecutive PATs made. Again, these are all kind of 3 busy offenses. These 3 kickers are all busy this fall, and of course Emmy Doty. It's fantastic. Again, you don't see many girl players. Again, it's the way this game's kind of it's just she's definitely in the minority in this, and she's doing fantastic things. And again, she had a very busy season for Hanover, but she was as efficient as they come, and she definitely deserves her flowers on this list.
If I gave you 50 extra points, how many do you think you'd hit?
Oh boy, that's a really
With the defense coming at you and everything.
I'm a pretty crappy kicker. I'm
Okay.
probably gonna toe everything. Just toe it and pray.
Okay.
50 with the defense coming. Hopefully, I have a good long snapper. And
You got
holder.
people watching too. It's like a
Yeah.
regular game.
I think I can get 15. I'll say
15 out of 50.
I think I can get lucky 15 times, and I'm towing it every single time. I don't know. So
I'm going to go 25 for me.
Oh, there you go.
I played soccer a little bit growing up, but, I think that I could get 25 in there. I think that
anything below the waist, I don't really have much coordination. It's pretty much all up here.
I think I could,
at least now.
I could pull out some old soccer shoes and put them on.
There you go.
Honestly, when I watch kickers, I do watch that kind of shoes they're wearing.
Hey, I'll tell you this, not as much as these three. That's all I could say. These three kickers.
Oh,
Shout out to
absolutely.
them. Again, as you mentioned, it's a third of the game, and they did their part this fall.
Yeah, and it's a part of the game that always is
overlooked.
Yeah, it's overlooked. It gets hidden, but when it's obviously needed the most, you care about it the most. But it's a position that is so huge for a team's success. Now let's go to all-purpose team. Now, this is kind of a list where these guys played probably multiple positions. Maybe they did something on offense and defense, or they really deserve to be on this list. It's just like there are so many great players. And we'll start with Deshaun Woods out of Hammond Central. Deshaun Woods he had probably the best start of the year we've ever seen from anybody. He was running the ball all over the place, and he was doing everything on defense as well. He had a couple of interceptions, including a pick six. He was huge for Hammond Central. And Micah Jones out of Andrean, he's another big guy, for those 59ers. Jeremiah Standstill out of River Forest. I watched him against that River Forest and Griffith game. He was really huge, in that game for them. You had Jaden Hart out of Michigan City, a Syracuse commit. We watched him against Lake Central, and of course that he's been followed very heavily just because of how good of a running back he is. He also can be a returner here and there, but mostly seen in the backfield as a running back, and he was, as good as it gets. Like you keep saying, this is a running back room in the whole region. Mm-hmm. It's tough to compete, and especially a guy like Jaden Hart who's got a D1 commit offer. That's how you know how good of a player he is, because there are so many great running backs in this area that you have to try and outperform to make yourself stick out. And that's what Jaden Hart has done in his career. He's done a good job really making his presence known and making an impact for those Michigan City Wolves, but that is the all-purpose team.
Yeah, it's, again, these are guys that we kind of had to throw on there. It's competitive all around, and again, these are guys that could really give you nightmares one way or another, whether that's with their defensive play or offensive play. Again, Jaden Hart's kind of a guy, of course, the name that sticks out, I believe, on this list, of course, Syracuse commit, going into the year. Seen as probably, one of the biggest playmakers, and it was kind of a not Jaden Hart-like year at one point, but he really kind of turned it up.
At the about 6-game mark.
Yeah, middle of the season, again, he kind of started getting back into form. And again, he can catch passes a lot. Again, with that Michigan City spread offense, he was definitely a big threat in the pass game as much as he is in the run game. And, all of these guys, again, some of them, they'll be back. Again, I'm excited to see where these guys grow from here. So now we're moving on, man. That's it for honorable mention.
Yeah, let's take a break on our RSN All-Area Football Show, and when we come back, we'll go over the second team. So stay tuned as you're watching this on the Region Sports Network, the only game in town.
With electrical services from Economy Electric Heating and Cooling, you can radiate the perfect amount of light and energy into your home. From rewiring and code upgrades to ceiling fans, lighting, security, and more, Economy Electric Heating and Cooling's trained electricians will make sure you can enjoy your home on full power all the time. For a free estimate on electrical work, call Economy Electric Heating and Cooling at 219-923-4441, and you can visit them on the web at forajobdoneright.com. That's the number 4, ajobdoneright.com.
Earn Now you learn from the best hands in the business. The Bricklayers Allied Craft Workers for Indiana, Kentucky Apprenticeship. That's right, this is a paid apprenticeship.
I'm getting an education while learning a trade and getting paid for it.
The thing that surprised me the most about this apprenticeship program is the respect I've received after the proper time and training.
Classes start soon, so apply now. There are training centers throughout Indiana and Kentucky. We are the Bricklayers and Allied Craft Workers for Indiana, Kentucky Apprenticeship. The best hands in the business.
For over 100 years, Burns Funeral Home and Crematory has been assisting families in their time of need. Serving Northwest Indiana, the staff at Burns Funeral Home will help guide your family in creating a meaningful ceremony. From a simple to elaborate to traditional or unique, the caring family at Burns Funeral Home will tailor a ceremony to fit your needs. And for your other loved ones, Burns Funeral now has a pet cemetery and crematory. Visit burnsfuneral.com or give them a call at 219-942-1117.
Blythe's Team Sports in Valparaiso is a leader in athletics apparel and equipment sales. With in-house production including screen printing, trophies, embroidery, and more, Blythe's can help you to create the perfect look. For more information, visit them online at teamblythes.com. Blythe's Team Sports in Valparaiso, where the athletes shop.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the RSN All-Area Football Show. If you're just joining us, we went over our honorable mentions. Now we're getting into some of the fun. We got some second-team mentions. We'll do the first teams later in the show. But now we're getting even more into our list. Do you remember how many people we had on the honorable mention list by any chance?
Ooh, I don't want to count them out right now, but it's a pretty
About
penny.
50, would you say, or more?
On the honorable mention,
Yeah.
I'd say it's definitely pushing about 30.
Okay.
I'd say kids. So again, shout out to all of them. But this is kind of the nitty gritty.
Yeah,
best in the area.
This is where Mike DeWan was watching film at 3 a.m. at his house.
Oh,
no,
might have been 5. No,
he was acting like he was a D1 scout.
a little bit. No, it was all a team effort, man. You already know it was a team effort. But I had to do some research, man. These guys are fun to watch, and again, it was fun film to watch. It was a way to put it.
So let's start off the quarterback. It's going to be Mark Rowland out of the Boone Girl Wolves. Congratulations, Mark. An incredible year for the young man. Over 3,000 total yards, a 65% of completions, 42 total touchdowns. He led the area in passing yards and total touchdowns. He broke 2 of his own school records for passing yards and passing touchdowns in a single season. He's only a junior. Boone Grove, he's back next year. You guys got yourself a great quarterback. And he's a 3A junior all-state selection. And Mark Rowland, we talked about it all year long. He was rolling with the Boone Grove Wolves, and he is definitely worthy of making this list.
Yeah, it was super fun to keep up with these guys. Again, we see a lot of his receivers on this list a little bit. I mean, he didn't just target one guy. It was all just spreading it around the field. Again, find somebody to make a play, and they'll make it for him, and he'll put it on the money. Again, watching his film, it was fun to see kind of that offense work because we unfortunately didn't really get a chance to get out there and catch them again. Hopefully we change that next year. But yeah, this dude's a baller. And, again, I'm kind of interested to see what college coaches are thinking of him. I was kind of, again, doing a little bit of research. Recruiting hasn't picked up quite yet, I believe, for Rowland, but I believe, again, the way after this season, I think coaches should take a look at this guy. And, again, their offense is kind of set up for the college level. Again, it's spread offense. It's quick. It's fast-paced. They kind of get things moving, and it's kind of what I bet college coaches are looking for their future quarterback. So, again, shout out to Rowland and just that whole Boone Grove team for a fantastic season. Yeah, absolutely. A running back, it's going to be Crown Point's own Larry Ellison. His first year as a running back, he had over 300 carries, over 1,800 rushing yards, and 29 total touchdowns. He had the school record in carries and rushing yards. He actually ended up leading the area in rushing yards as well. He was a 6A junior all-state selection. A huge, and I mean huge part for the Crown Point Bulldog run to the state championship in the Class 6A. And if you go back to those games, especially against Westfield and Penn, he was more pivotal than anything, playing, as the quarterback in a way, while the Wildcat formation, a lot of direct snaps right to him. And look, he wasn't rushing 40, 50 yards per carry, but, he was getting those huge first downs when needed. He was stretching out the clock,
And Larry Ellison was just a huge part to this Crown Point team, and I know the Bulldogs are going to be excited to have him back on the team next year. Him and Noah Ehrlich, who we'll talk about in a little bit. Spoiler, nevertheless, Ellison. Those two guys are going to be a huge dynamic duo next year. But Larry Ellison, one of the best years you could ask for as a running back.
Yeah, he impressed us a lot. Again, we find ourselves at a lot of Crown Point games this year, and yeah, I was at that Penn game specifically. Again, when the offense wasn't really clicking, maybe at the arms or legs of Noah Ehrlich, I mean, they put Ellison in the backfield and they let defenses know, hey, he's getting the ball, come and stop me, and he's the guy, again, you cannot take down on the first tackle. You can't arm tackle him. You have to gang wrap him up because he's fantastic at breaking tackles just as much as the next guy. And again, this is for his first season at the running back position. This was, I mean, you can't get much better than this, setting a school record in multiple categories. And like you said, Crown Point, they're really looking forward to maybe even a step up next year for this kid. I mean, they're going to be threatening next year, and I think it starts with Larry Ellison.
Yeah, absolutely. Another Bulldog, as we'll move to the receivers, is Landon Delich, the 6'4" senior, had over 40 catches on the year, over 670 receiving yards, 5 touchdowns, and he also had 26 total tackles as he was a DB, here and there. And he easily was the number one target for Ehrlich. I remember calling the LaPorte game with Jay Simmons, and it was about first down. Ehrlich was a play-action pass, and he had Delich wide open. Now, Delich dropped the pass. I'm not trying to call him out. But the next 6 plays were passes to Landon Delich. He caught them all and eventually scored for a touchdown. And that tells you the type of receiver he is. I mean, he's a matchup nightmare with his height, and he's got a speed of 4.56. That's pretty deadly. And, when you got a guy that tall and that fast, a lot of one-on-one opportunities for him. He is a Toledo commit, but like we mentioned, he was another big part in Noah Ehrlich's success this year. Like, you have a guy that size, that speed, and we didn't call it, but we were there, the Lake Central game. It was a number one target at that game as well. And you could tell the way he threw to him, he trusted Delich to make whatever adjustments he needed to get in position to catch the football. Whether that was getting his feet set near the sideline, whether that was getting his hands somewhere where only he could catch it and not picked off by a DB. And I really saw a lot of great tools, and I know that Landon Delich has the tangibles to play at the next level.
Yeah, he's, again, the matchup nightmares. I want to thank him personally. I was on his Twitter account. He provided us that 40-yard dash time, 4.56. I love him shouting that out, but again, it shows the type of player he is. He could beat you with just about any route. Again, you could throw him a jump ball with the 6'3" frame, but he could also kind of beat you with the speed on a dig route. I mean, he's tough, man. Again, believe it or not, I mean, on 24/7 Sports, he's actually rated as a safety recruit in the 2-star. So it's interesting. I'm kind of interested to see where he plays at the next level. Again, he obviously logged some snaps this year at the DB position, and with that speed, he kind of has that DB speed at that imposing 6'3" frame. So I'm interested to see what he does at the next level. But again, I want to congratulate him for a fantastic season. Again, a lot of Crown Point Bulldogs on this list, and again, they all deserve their flowers, and that's why we're here today. So. Yeah, it's again. I'm interested. Again, it's going to be, I think, a bright future for this kid at Toledo.
Our next receiver will be LeBron Hill from the Morton Governors. 34 receptions on the year, 564 receiving yards, and 8 touchdowns. Another guy, another matchup nightmare. He's 6'5", but he's got the speed to return kicks, which he did actually this year. He is a guy who just blazes right out of that kickoff return, or like we mentioned about Landon Delich. If you have him one-on-one, probably going to throw it to him just because of how tall he is and how fast he is. He has a 5A junior all-state selection, 3-star recruit, currently with offers from Ball State, Central Michigan, and Toledo. But LeBron Hill, he's a guy you kind of brought me on to him. I mean, I didn't have much knowledge about him going into this year, but you were kind of all about him from the get-go, and you're absolutely right. The way he played, the way he sized up, and he's only a junior, so he's got another year as well. But LeBron Hill was impressive for those Governors.
That's going to be a fun Morton team next year. Again, LeBron Hill definitely big jump this season. I think he was first at Hamilton Central, transferred over to Morton, and yeah, coaches are kind of taking notice. Again, he's getting offers from some MAC schools, and I think it's going to only go up from here. You see a 6'5" guy with a kick return speed. That's very imposing, and I think he's just going to even skyrocket more next year with the play of Holland Harris and just that whole Governors team with who they're bringing back next year. I'm excited for LeBron.
Our next and final receiver on the second team is Josh Oglesby. 42 receptions, 528 receiving yards, and 10 touchdowns. He also had 13 punts where he totaled 447 punting yards. He's a 3-year starter, but this was really the first time he stepped up in that huge role in that position. And he had 122 or 127 receiving yards in only his freshman and sophomore season. So, I mean, that's you kind of talk about that. Go from that to 528 in 1 year. He was second on his team in receiving yards, but he was first in touchdowns. He was honorable mention all conference. Another guy who, we're kind of seeing step up in a way. A lot of these guys we've seen in the region especially is when they're called upon, they step up, and Josh Oglesby in the offense you need him to step up, and that's what he did, and it was very impressive to watch.
And he's only a junior now. He's kind of going to be that kind of that number one next year. We know Roland's coming back, and they got a couple other pieces on that Boone Grove team, but Oglesby, again, they lose a bit of talent at the receiver position, so I think Oglesby, again, is in line for maybe another step up year next, but this is a tall receiver group. Doing my research, I think Oglesby is also over 6'2". So these guys are all, again, combination of size and speed that there's a reason they're on this list. So
yeah, now let's move to the O-lineman. First off, Jackson Collard, 5A junior all-state selection, and he anchored a program best rushing attack this year in the O-lineman. It's like you said, there's not much stats on them. How do you really judge? And the one, I kind of said it sarcastically, just look at the teams who had the best rushing numbers this year, and that's what Jackson Collard was a part of.
Yeah, again, a lot of coaches, a lot of NCC coaches, they had a lot of praise for Jackson. I had actually the privilege of coaching this kid. When he was in 7th grade, I was going into my senior year. I know, he's a good dude, man.
So he's a Mike DeWan product.
Yeah, that's probably not the best thing to put beside your name, but he's a good dude. Yeah, I can't say I was the best coach, but I'm no O-line coach, but whoever was the coach that year did him well. And again, it's what they did this year is fantastic for the Stings, and of course Ascadon. We talked about him earlier, but yeah, shout out to Jackson. Again, a lot of these big boys up front, we got to give them the flowers they deserve.
Next is Luke Juris, first team all conference. Really was a nasty guard, and they offered a mean 1-2 punch on the interior with Olagu. And Luke Juris, he's another guy that you really liked, you were talking to me about, and you're the one that always gives me the O-line info. I mean, I feel like if anybody truly loves and appreciates the position, it's you, and you will appreciate the way Luke Juris played this year.
Yeah, again, Hobart, a lot of these NCC coaches, again, we talked about the run dominant of NCC, so a lot of these NCC coaches got back to us, thankfully, and they let us know about those guys up front and watched a little bit of film and on Luke Juris and his teammate we're going to mention that's on the first team on the O-line. They're a tough bunch, and again, Willie Shear, who we're going to talk about in a little bit, had a fantastic year at the running back position, and Johnny Sorensen as well did some things with his legs. But yeah, watching this guy, he's nasty. He's a nasty guard. They were running behind him a lot. He had a fantastic season for sure.
Yeah, now we have Damian Herrera out of Morton. He was really the guy that really helped establish that Morton running game, and that's the guy you need when you have a running back like Dontrell Harris in the backfield, and he was really the leader of that group that led to high rushing numbers from the Morton Governors.
Ran behind him a lot. Again, watching his film, he finishes his blocks. He's a nasty dude. He's a guy that wants to get under your skin and make you know that about his presence. And again, Morton, I think Herrera's coming back next year as well. I believe he's only a junior, and again, I'm expecting big things from this kid come 2024.
Yep. Next is Caleb Sharp out of Valpo. He was opposite tackle to Matt Hoffer, and look, Matt Hoffer is a really good O-lineman as well. So when you're playing opposite of a D1 commit, and you got to find a way to step up, and that's what Caleb Sharp did. You look at Valpo, another team that was able to pound the rock, another team who had a lot of rushing success, even when their starting running back was out for the majority of the season.
Correct.
It tells you how good that O-lineman was. He was an all-conference selection. He's a 2-year starter. Yeah, Caleb Sharp, obviously Matt Hofford is going to be the guy that people talk about when you talk about the O-line of Valpo, but don't sleep on Caleb Sharp as well.
I think he's next in line. Again, he's anchoring that other tackle position on the opposite side of Hoffer, and again, he's a fantastic piece, and he's a guy to look out for next year. Again, it seems like Valpo just pumps out these O-linemen left and right, similar to how Maryville pumps out D-linemen. It's Sharp's next in line. Again, he impressed me a lot this year.
Yeah. Final one is going to be Jonathan Ross out of Lake Central. Another guy who really helped, a great running back. He helped Xavier Williams, really a great season, although he didn't play 100% of that season. And also Marion Brooks, the backup running back who started a lot of games. He helped him as well. He's a guy who's an all-conference selection, another 2-year starter. When we were doing training with the tribe, I should say, he was somebody who was always being physical in practice, and somebody Coach Rick Good really loved coaching, and he was the leader of that group. So, I was able to get that main, exposure of Jonathan Ross for covering Lake Central of what we did for them. But, he was a beast at the O-line, and I know Chase Kwiatkowski had a couple of holes in that RPO game because of Ross.
Yeah, he's a dude you want to have on your offensive line. He's an imposer. Again, he's going to finish blocks. He's, again, I don't want to say he was kind of the top dog on that O-line that kind of helped Xavier get where he is today, but that's a dude you want on your side. And, again, he had another fantastic season. I'm excited to see where he goes from here.
Yeah, now we have kind of this is like the utility player, a guy who can do it all on the field. It's Willie Shear out of Hobart. And the reason why is because he was a running back. He even returned a little bit. And he played defense when they needed to. On the year, he had 165 carries, over 1,200 total yards, 34 total tackles, 2.5 tackles for loss, and 17 touchdowns. And this is his first true season as a running back, replacing the great Trey Gibson. He was a first-team all-conference, and Willis Shear was a guy that we talked about a plethora of times during our Region Football Weekly shows. And I feel like maybe he got annoyed the way how much we talked about him. But, no, he's one of those guys where he can do everything. You need him to be running back, he's there. You need to be even a receiver, he's there. You need to play DB, he's there. Linebacker, he's there. Kickoff, punt returner, he's there. And that's kind of why we gave this, position of, that utility guy, that athletic player, because that is a position, it's not a position, but it's still an opportunity to give somebody recognition who's doing not just one side of football, not just two, but three things on the football field.
Yeah, again, going into his first year, really making a big impact. Only a junior, so we're expecting a lot from him next year for the Brickies. But, yeah, it's tough to fill the shoe to Trey Gibson, and I think he did that pretty well. Maybe not to the level of Trey Gibson, but that's a lot to ask. But, hey, we still got another year of Shear here, and, again, he's kind of going to be that guy next year. Hobart's losing a bit of talent. Of course, they're going through a little bit of coaching carousel as well over there. We don't have to get into that, but it's again, I'm excited looking to see what this guy could do next year.
Yeah, let's move to the defense now. We'll go to the line. There's 4 guys. We'll start with Eli Deerdorf. 71 total tackles on the year, 17 tackles for loss, 8 sacks, including an interception. He was first team all-conference.
Yeah, he's tough for Kankakee Valley. Again, it's a lot of praise from his own head coach. He got back to us with a couple of his players, and it's he had a fantastic season. From what I saw, I believe he just really – going into this year, he didn't have the stats really that emulated this at all. He really jumped out, and he kind of has that next level frame at the D-line position. He's kind of 6'4", kind of little. I want to say 215. I think I remember on his Max Preps page. He's a big he's a kind of a matchup nightmare for opposing tackles, but he also made his presence known on the offensive end. So yeah, shout out to him again. It was a fantastic season for those Cougars.
We'll move over to James Veal now. 50 total tackles, 15 of those for loss, 5.5 sacks. He in fact was voted the MVP defensive lineman by his team. So not only is a second team mentioned, but he has the respect of his teammates, which you love to see.
And that's a fantastic honor from the Maryville Pirates.
Absolutely.
There is we're going to mention 2 more Maryville D linemen on this list on eventually our first team. Spoiler alert, but that's high praise from your teammates, especially with how packed this D lineman room is.
Next, Mark Ganales. He has 75 total tackles on the year, 3 for loss and a sack. Another all-conference selection on that line.
Another CP dog. Yeah, sorry about the typo there. It's Gonzalez on that one. I know. These notes. Sorry, man.
Setting me up to
I
fail.
I had to watch film, and I had to do. Well,
Mark Gonzalez
there it is.
out of the Crown Point.
Yeah, only sophomore, man. He actually, I believe, he was either second or third on the Crown Point team at the D lineman position behind the great Will Clark, who we'll talk about later. But that is a very, very impressive number to be, again, the best defense in the area and near the top of your team's leaderboard at the nose guard position. Again, he's not your typical nose guard. He's got some decent height, but he's not really a lane clogger. He can move around pretty quickly, and watching his film, the dog's got a good one for the next 2 years.
Is the next name typed in correctly?
We're good.
All right, Adrian Holly out of Michigan City.
I'll let you know.
41 total tackles, 15.5 for a loss, 7 sacks, 2 fumble recoveries, a DAC all-conference selection. He's a guy I was impressed with. When we were doing our notes for the Lake Central Michigan City game that we broadcasted, he was the guy who popped out for me. The stats for the whole year, and he was a big part in that defense. And you had Deion Smith. Sometimes there he didn't play defense all the time. But when you did have a Deion Smith and an Adrian Holly on that line, man, there was some destruction going on.
Yeah, he's a dog, and I believe he was an All-State selection too. I forgot to list that in, but he offers that next level size. I think college coaches are starting to see that. I'm excited to see what this kid can bring next year for that pretty solid Michigan City team. Again, when we were talking to coaches, Coach French actually got back to us as well, and he offered some high praise for Adrian Holly. So it should be, again, I'm interested to see kind of if City could take even another further step. We saw what they did this year, but we'll see what they can do next year as well.
Let's move over to the linebackers now. It's going to be Gio Bailey Hanna, and 68 total tackles on the year, 16 sacks, 3 fumble recoveries, including 3 forced fumbles. He was second in the state in sacks as a linebacker, a 5A junior all-state selection.
Yeah, he's quick, man. I was watching a little bit of his film again. Hammond Central. They had a solid year, maybe not of years past, but they're of course you got to venture out and play some tough teams. But they walk him up a lot. Again, 16 sacks as a linebacker is a crazy number. And what they kind of do, again, they send the house, and he's kind of their speed rusher. They bring him up to the line, and they just tell him, go get the quarterback, and he did that 16 separate times. If he's not doing that, he's forcing pressure. And, again, I bet he's probably shooting for that number next year. That's a tall number to ask, but, I expect plenty more where this is coming from Gio Bailey Hanner.
Bradley Gibson is your next linebacker on our second team, 112 total tackles, ton of those for loss, 4 sacks, 3 forced fumbles. And he as well was a first-team all-conference. We've talked about him a couple of times as well in Region Football Weekly when we did some of our game previews. He was a guy that always stood out in the stat sheet.
Yeah, we did plenty of Hobart games this year. Again, this was a fun guy to watch. He didn't really have maybe the tackle mark he probably wanted in comparison to last season, but nonetheless, this dude he's tough, and he's starting to go on a little bit of visits I see here and there. He's going to probably, play at the next level somewhere, I hope at least. Again, he's a very talented dude for that Hobart Bricky defense that, again, he was the guy that they needed to turn to if they didn't want to, when times are tough, he was kind of the guy to go out there and make a play.
Yeah, absolutely. Xavier Harlovich now. I had the pleasure of watching him out of Wheeler. Man, that kid can fly on the football field. 114 total tackles. I believe that's one of the best in the state, not just in the region. He was up there for total tackle numbers. 5 interceptions. He also had 5 touchdowns. Another guy who played both sides of the field. He was a guy who kind of played that fullback tight end role. First team all-conference selection, but you and I both really liked what we saw from Harlovich throughout the year.
Yeah, Wheeler in general, I kind of talked about how those linebackers, there's a lot of tandems in the area, and Jackson Smith, another guy from Wheeler who was on our honorable mention list. It was tough picking between the two. I don't know if I wanted to pick both, but Harlovich, again, 5 interceptions at the linebacker position is fantastic, as well as what he did on the offensive side. It's again, credit to Wheeler. Again, I think it starts. We look at the offensive numbers. Of course, it's the sexy stat to kind of look out for, and the defense and O-linemen, of course, as well, also often get overlooked. And again, the play of Harlovich and Jackson Smith really kept things level for the Wheeler Bearcats. And again, got to give them both a shout out.
Ty Veen is your final linebacker. 86 total tackles, 9.5 for loss, 2 blocked field goals as well. Another all-conference selection, and another time that we've had a chance to watch these guys. Yeah, we've had the opportunity and the pleasure to watch a lot of these guys play on this list. And it makes it easy a little bit making it just because we see how they play, we know how good they are.
Right.
But it makes it so hard because of how talented all these players and athletes are. Ty Veen was a one that a lot of us at RSN liked. He had a couple of games that really kind of stuck out to us. I know the LaPorte and Valpo game we did, he was really huge and kind of holding them to scoreless. And that was a defense who was very stifling.
Of course. I believe he was voted team MVP at his banquet, which again, that's speaking a lot of volume as being with the Valparaiso Vikings.
Yeah.
Again, of course, they had probably state aspirations. Nonetheless, you don't have to get into that, but that's a very talented team from top to bottom, and that shows again how much his teammates respect him and the impact he had on the Valparaiso Vikings. Again, we mentioned kind of the tandems. Again, Sammy Ampiliotis, another fantastic piece. That again, both these guys are fantastic for the Vikings at the linebacker position. But Veen, again, he flies all over the play and all over the field, and he's again going to probably make some noise at the next level if he chooses to go that route.
Let's move to the DBs now. You got Jalen Holmes, 85 total tackles, 2 interceptions, a fumble recovery. He actually led his team in tackles. First team all-conference, a good season for Jaden Holmes.
Yeah, for sure. It's, again, he didn't do too much leading up to this year. Again, we talked about how fantastic that Andrean team was a year ago. Of course, the play of Drake Bowen and some other pieces that they had. But Holmes, again, he kind of stepped up and really filled that DB role. Again, he's only a junior. Andrean, they're going to have a scary secondary next year. We're going to talk about his running mate in the backfield on the first team, but it's they're solid. They're going to be solid next year. It was a tough year for Andrean, probably not to their typical standards, but I think next year they turned it around, and Jaden Holmes is going to be a name to look out for next year.
Next is Maryville Pirates' own John Peters. He played both sides of the football. He was a DB and a receiver, but 31 total tackles, interception as well. About 400 receiving yards and 2 tackles for loss. He was an all-conference selection in that DAC. But John Peters, he was a guy who played a huge role for the Maryville Pirates on that late run they went to the end of the year in that playoff run where they beat Valpo. And even in that Fort Wayne Snyder game that they lost, he was still a huge part on that team. And he played both sides of the ball pretty well. Right. He could have been receiver or DB.
Yeah, he had a fantastic sophomore year at receiver. Numbers were a little bit down this year at the receiver position, but I think, again, they had a new quarterback getting used to kind of Dante Pope, getting on that same kind of telepathy. But, again, he'll be back next year, John Peters. And, again, a lot of Pirates coming back. Of course, they lose a couple, but they're going to be a tough team next year. And John Peters, again, a name to look out for those Purple Pirates. So
Tyler Verschure now, 25 total tackles, 5 interceptions, and 3 pass breakups. But career-wise, he has 17 interceptions. He's a 5A senior all-state selection. In fact, he's a 2-time all-state team member. And we keep talking about that Viking defense, and Verschure was another guy who we were very sure about in, putting on this list. We talk about Ampliotis, we talk about Veen. This was a defense that was as loaded as it gets, and really no region team had success against them in terms of offense. Crown Point won that game, but they only scored 19 points. I believe the most points a region team scored against Valpo was Maryville in the playoffs. That might have been the most points anyone has scored against their defense from Northwest Indiana, and Verschure was a big part.
Yeah, again, 2-time All-State team member. That speaks a lot of volumes, but if you want a definition of ball hawk in the area, I think it's Tyler Verschure.
Yeah.
He had 5 interceptions this year, and that's actually a down year. I think he had 7 last year, so it's... Yeah, this dude is something else. He also offers kind of track speed. I think he runs on the track team. He's quick. Again, he can make plays all over the field, and you do not want to test him in coverage. I'm excited to see where he goes from here.
I find it interesting because you mentioned it. He kind of had a down year in terms of interceptions, but it's almost like a sign of respect.
You don't want to throw to him.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe in the early going, you don't know about the kid. How is he in pressure, or how is he when the ball's thrown at him? And you find out, he picks you off 7 times.
He'll make you pay. He'll also make you pay in the return game, too. I want to say he returned, kind of offered as again, track speed, man. He's quick. He offers that speed at the DB position, and that's why he's on this list once again.
Yeah, coming into this year, obviously, you think of them, you're like, yeah, we're not throwing the ball over there.
No, why would you?
Interceptions, I think it's just an interesting number. I always, obviously we don't have these inside stats. The NFL would. But how many times, a ball is thrown at a secondary or a DB, how many times it's targeted, caught, receiving yards, all that. They have the stats for that. But if we did, I feel like Tyler Verschure would have very few opportunities just because of how good he is.
Right.
So next is Marcel Dixon, 68 total tackles, 6 for loss, 4 interceptions, and 8 pass breakups. He was a first-team all-conference selection as well.
Yeah, sophomore too, man. He offers a lot for Westside. It's a bright piece of a solid Westside team that had a solid year. Again, he's a sure tackler. Obviously, getting 68 total tackles at the DB position is not easy. Again, it's GSSC. A lot of teams, I'd say, predominantly more running the ball, kind of smash mouth, and he's not afraid to go into the box and make a play. But again, 4 interceptions, also 8 pass breakups is a big number that sticks out to me. Again, he's kind of etching himself out. Again, 2 more years again with Westside. He's etching his name out as someone you do not want to throw to.
Yeah, next is another guy who played both positions very well. It's kind of that, spot we gave Willie Shear, but it's going to be Corey Noonan out of Boone Grove, and just because he played both sides of the football very well. 48 receptions, 518 receiving yards, 10 total touchdowns, but on defense he had 37 tackles and 7 interceptions. He was a first-team all-conference selection, as well as he led the area and interceptions. So not only one of the top targets for Mark Rowland, one of the best DBs there in the area.
Yeah, he's got some decent ball skills, it looks like. He's got a nose for the ball, whether that's he's trying to score or score the other way on defense. Again, this Boone Grove team, so many playmakers, and it's tough. Again, the Noonan twins, they're both seniors, so it's kind of a package deal that it's going to be tough to replace for the Wolves next year, but we'll cross that bridge when we get there. Again, shout out to Corey, and it's again, that's a tough season to replicate for anybody. 7 picks along with 10 total touchdowns. That's a nice little campaign for the boy. So shout out to him.
Now let's move to special teams. Oliver Brewer, the kicker, Crown Point Bulldogs.
Freshie.
Really good year for him. 44 out of 46 on PATs, only 2 for 2 on field goals. He also had 6 punts for 234 yards. He had a big field goal actually in that Westfield game. It was the second field goal only made of the year. They don't, obviously Crown Point, they need to kick many field goals because they scored a bunch of times, but for a freshman kicker to step into that spot in the playoffs and make a field goal, that's pretty impressive. And then you have for the punter, Xander Langford, 41 of 49 on PATs, 4 of 5 on field goals. But overall, he was a beast punting. Pat McAfee would be proud of him. Over 1,200 punting yards, and he averaged 30.5 yards per punt.
Yeah, Hobart's got a decent little special teams unit. We're going to talk about their long snapper a little bit later. But Oliver Brewer as well. Freshman on this list. They got an offense as busy as Crown Point. They're usually partying in the end zone. Again, he's got a lot of PATs to make. Those points you can't really leave off the board. And he was effective as can be. And then, imagine having your second field goal kick of your career in the semi-state game. That takes a lot of poise. And, again, Crown Point's got a good one for the next 3 years.
Yeah, absolutely. We're going to take a break here on the RSN All-Area Football Show. And when we come back, we'll do our first team selections, which you're watching us on the Region Sports Network, the only game in town.
When life takes you places and you can't get to the store, shop online with Strack and Van Til To Go. Our to-go service is easy to use, and it can save you time and money. Once your order is in, our own Strack and Van Til team preps your order with care. For delivery or pickup, enjoy the convenience of letting our to-go team shop for you. Enjoy your special moments. Sign up online today at shop.strackandvantil.com.
Hi, I'm Crowell Company's Lantern Man. I'll cover your motorcycle. I'll be with you on the water. I'll be with you on the snow. I'll cover your insurance needs wherever you go. I'll be at Crowell Agency from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. As Crowell Company's Lantern Man, I'm your insurance superhero.
Crowell Companies, the insurance professionals in Highland, Maryville, and Michigan City.
From schools to stadiums, hospitals, and bridges, everywhere you look, union carpenters are building Indiana. With jobs and skilled trades in high demand, there's never been a better time to start building your future. As an apprentice, you'll earn a debt-free college degree, earn while you learn, and receive great benefits like healthcare and retirement. So what are you waiting for? Visit carpenters.com to learn more. Visit carpenters.com and start building your future today.
Thinking about what to do after high school? Consider a career with Boilermakers Local 374. As a Boilermaker apprentice, you'll earn while you learn. We offer excellent wages and benefits, and as part of our no-cost hands-on apprenticeship program, you'll learn from the best in state-of-the-art training centers and on the job. Become a union Boilermaker and get on your way to a great career. Find out more, visit www.local374.org or call 219-845-1000.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the RSN All-Area Selection Team Show. Jack Thiel, Mike Dewan, Zach Snelly, if you're just joining us. We went over our honorable mention list and our second team list, and now it's time for the first team all-selection list here at Region Sports Network. These are the guys who really stood out, and we've had the pleasure of talking about these guys for about 3-4 months, and we get to talk about them for one more day, and it starts with the quarterback, the kid who really had himself a special year and led a program to a special time, Noah Ehrlich out of the Crown Point Bulldogs. Over 2,400 100 passing yards, 64% of completions. He also had 292 rushing yards as well, 33 total touchdowns on the year. He also served as the punter. He was 7 punts for 266 punting yards. School records in single-season passing yards, passing touchdowns, and completions. He was a 2023 6A Junior All-State selection. He also was a 2023 DAC Offensive MVP. He's considered a 3-star recruit. Currently getting offers from Miami, Ohio, Toledo, and Central Michigan. And I also saw an article where he was on the Mr. Indiana football watch list for next year, and there's a lot of great talent. You got Mark Zachary, number 1 player in all of Indiana. You have Elijah Price as well, the running back for Ben Davis.
Larry Ellison, too.
And Larry Ellison.
You made a short list as well.
And now Noah Ehrlich as well, the quarterback. And before you give your little spiel, one thing I will say is this kid really blossomed this year. The Hobart transfer coming into Crown Point. It's the same, but it's the different. Both schools are heavily involved with their football programs. But for Crown Point, it meant a little more. You had a new head coach, a lot of moving parts for this Crown Point team.
True.
And Noah Ehrlich, he's only a junior. And I remember watching him against Lake Central. This was when Crown Point was winning a lot of their games by a lot of points. Their starters weren't really playing, the full time. And I'm watching this game, and I'm like, where's this Noah Ehrlich everybody's been talking about? And the second half, he lit up that scoreboard, doing with his arms, doing with his legs. Then I had the pleasure of calling the Crown Point and LaPorte football game. And I tell you one thing, I've never seen a kid throw on the run in high school football in Indiana like this kid. The way he's able to throw on the run, throw maybe on his back foot if needed, but also stay in the pocket and make those throws was as impressive as it gets. You don't see many quarterbacks able to successfully throw those types of accurate throws on the run. And it seemed like he preferred to do that because how good he was at it. And, when it comes to quarterback play, that's why a lot of teams in the region have trouble making it all the way up to that state championship game, because you play those teams in Indianapolis and they have standout quarterbacks.
Right.
And that's how this makes Noah Ehrlich such a great quarterback, the fact that he was able to lead Crown Point, the first region team to ever make it to a 6A state championship game. That's what makes it even more special, the way Noah Ehrlich played. And I also think him being first team, other than stats, is because he was a leader on that football field. He wasn't an I guy. He was a we guy. We interviewed him once, and the way he taught, he never said me. He said he said we, a program. They all play together, and Noah Ehrlich was the nucleus of that offense, not just as the quarterback, but also the leader, the general, making sure everybody's doing their assignments, making sure everybody's held accountable for. And, we talk about all these stats when it comes to being a great teammate, a leader, and a general. Noah Ehrlich, checks off all those boxes.
Yeah, and that's a lot to ask when in your first season with the program. Again, we mentioned he's a transfer from Hobart, and it's to break 3 school records and lead your team to a state championship, their first ever state championship appearance. It earns you a spot on this list. Of course, again, big shout out to Mark Rowland. He definitely had the stats, but with what Ehrlich did for this program and again this community, we can't shy away from it. And again, it's much respect to both the guys, but again, you mentioned you talked with Ehrlich, and it's again he's well spoken. He knows what's at stake, and he knows again it's a team effort. It's It's what you have to do as a quarterback, and again, I'm excited to see where this goes to the future. Again, he's one of those guys next year for Crown Point. He's going to be back in that red jersey, and he's going to again make some plays, maybe even take another step up, which is crazy to think about. But he has that talent. Again, looking at his film a little bit, you mentioned how he throws off platform a lot, and he kind of almost prefers that. He makes those next level throws. You see some of those top quarterbacks make in the league. I mean, we could talk about again Mahomes. That's kind of the way quarterbacks are trying to look for. Again, rolling out. I mean, throwing some crazy plays. I mean, Josh Allen, again, exceptional arm talent that could make any throw you ask them to. And Ehrlich, again, he kind of has that talent here. I don't want to compare him to the best of the best, but he's shown a lot of flashes this year, and again, we're only more excited to see what could happen up in 2024.
Next is Caden Verrett, running back for Hanover Central, 200 carries, over 17 total rushing yards, but all-purpose, he had over 2,000 all-purpose yards, 33 total touchdowns, 2023 3A junior all-state selection. And
he also punted.
And punted as well. He had 19 punts for 626 yards. But when you talk about running backs, loaded list, Caden Verrett just stood out. The way he was able to help this Hanover Central offense have another undefeated regular season. And we had, we've called that game Hanover Central and West Lafayette, like a 92-yard rushing touchdown. The kid's built like a bull, but he's fast like Flash.
Yeah.
You look at him and you don't think he's that fast. You think he's a bruiser. You think that, he's only going to get 4 or 5 yards. No, if he has an open hole, he's going to accelerate and take his speed into the house. And that's what he did a lot this year. And an impressive year for only 200 carries and have that many rushing yards or just all-purpose yards as a whole. Caden Verrett was as impressive as it gets in the backfield.
Yeah, he's a beast. Again, only a junior. I think these numbers are going to exceed next year. But one thing that caught my eye, I was kind of surfing through our Twitter, and they did like a max day at Hanover's at a weightlifting program, whatever. I think they were doing off-season lifts, and they did maxes, and they had a software where they kind of measured everything and ranked everything out. And I think he led the players. I think even seniors from this year, he led players in, I believe, vertical jump, broad jump.
Jeez.
I think 40-yard dash, and he might have been up there on the squat too. He posted all those on his Twitter, and that's like, man. I mean, you're a running back, man, and you're leading in categories that maybe some DBs or some some strong, some typically stronger positions should be leading in. But no, this guy's he's a total package, man. He could punt it too. Of course, he doesn't just do everything, in the rushing game. But again, another play from that West Lafayette game, he showed off his hands. It was kind of like a Hail Mary a little bit right before half that again caught a pass probably 20 yards out, still 20 yards away from the end zone, made a cut, reversed all the way back, field goal for the pylon. Again, this guy's going to be special, even more special next year, I think.
Now let's go to the receivers. TJ Caldwell, the transfer. He had a lot of hype coming into Hobart. I was very excited to watch him play. 48 receptions, 846 receiving yards, 13 touchdowns as well. He was a 2023 4A senior all-state commit. He's actually committed as well to Valparaiso, so staying kind of locally in the area. But TJ Caldwell, the transfer out of Calumet, he's got the size, he's got the speed, and him and Johnny Sorensen definitely had a special connection.
Yeah, I mean, again, it seemed like they were playing together for a minute. He may not have had the stats he did at Calumet. He was kind of that really go-to guy at Calumet, but nonetheless, I mean, doing this at the NCC level, I mean, he was really just near the top of our leaderboards for just about most of the year until we get into our next guy. But yeah, he was a game breaker for Hobart, and again, we were kind of used to seeing Hobart again pound the rock, but it was interesting to see kind of how they could implement him in and spread the ball out, and they did just that this year. So shout out to Caldwell, and again, that was just a recently committed to Valparaiso, so I'm excited for that to see what he does for the Crusaders now, or the Beacons, right? Are they the Beacons?
Yeah, the Deep Beacons.
Beacons, sorry. Excuse me. But yes, the Valparaiso Beacons. So shout out to him. And, again, staying local, that's super cool to see.
Next is Bryce Compton out of Wheeler. 40 catches, 867 receiving yards, and 8 touchdowns. He also had 30 tackles and 2 interceptions. Second in the area in receiving yards while only playing 9 games. Got a tall frame with track speed. Talked about Caleb Klimzak, an honorable mention on our quarterbacks list. This was his number 1 guy, Bryce Compton. Compton's in the house, and
there
for him, he had just an exceptional year. The weird thing is, the only time we covered a Wheeler game, it was pouring rain, and he had no catches on the year. And other than that, he's got games where he's got 10 catches for 200 yards and 3 touchdowns. But we keep talking about how Wheeler had this, this magical run at the end to win that GSSC South title. Bryce Compton being the receiver he was, nobody could even come close to matching up with him.
Compton's in the house.
There you go.
He's tough.
Get
man.
the bass in there.
He's tough. Yeah, no, I got that. I know Stacey King always brings it up in
Bulls
games when he's talking about DeMar DeRozan. Yeah. But no, that was a fun film to watch. I watched his first couple plays. He mossed about 2 dudes, and I'm like, we'll clip this and we'll show that on the show because he's a beast, man. Again, he's got a tall frame. He makes the quarterback's job super easy because he also runs track and he runs it pretty well. Another junior, man. Again, I'm excited for these Wheeler Bearcats. Again, evolve, and we'll see kind of how that Klimzak and Compton connection looks in 2024.
Final receiver on the first team selection list is going to be Jimmy Finley out of the Andrean 59ers, 32 receptions, over 500 receiving yards. Also has 56 total tackles with 2 touchdowns. He switched to the receiver this year. He's actually a DB, and he led the team in receiving yards and catches. He's a 2-time All-State selection, a 3-star recruit currently with offers from Michigan State, Toledo, Central Michigan, and Miami, Ohio. You like this guy a lot in the beginning of the year. You were also very impressed with the way he was able to switch positions from DB two receiver, something that's not easy to do, although people think it is, but it's not. And I think he's even joked around about that, how he's made that switch. And you were just so impressed with the way he played at receiver for a team that was expected not to be as good as they were.
Yeah, we covered that Hobart game, especially when they played each other, and he made some fantastic plays. Again, it looked like he was playing receiver for a while. Sometimes he is. I mean, at the DB position, I know last year I think he led the state in interceptions. He was again fantastic as a sophomore, and now again in his after his junior season, he's now already have 2 All-State team selection nods. He might be going for a third next year. Again, we talked about the play of Jaden Holmes, and again that he's coming back next year in the secondary, and we'll see again Jimmy Finley stick him somewhere, and he's going to make some play for the Niners. And again, I'm excited to see how those guys all evolve next year for that Andrean team.
Yeah, and that's going to be fun to watch. And what's fun is going to be our offensive line list. Man, these guys were bruisers this year, and it's really the best of the best that the region has to offer in all linemen. And I have a feeling you'll see a lot of these guys playing on Saturday just because of how good they are. And it starts with a guy who will be playing on Saturday. It's Matt Hoffer out of Valparaiso, Toledo commit, 3-star recruit, 2 times All-State selection, and, of course, state title with the Valpo Vikings.
Right.
That's a guy we talked about all year long, and the ability to block for a guy like Davis and Berta, and not just this year, and Clark, not just this year, but last year as well. He was huge for this team, and coming into this year, there was a lot of hype surrounding Matt Hoffer.
Yeah, it's again Toledo commit. This was definitely the dude to look out for on the offensive line, and this guy was almost just about a shoe-in as it gets.
Yeah,
he again top 50 state team in the whole of Indiana. That's one of only 3 people on this list who are going to talk about it. It's the highest honors you could just about get in the state, and it's well deserved. Again, fantastic frame. Obviously, Toledo sees that, and they're getting a good one come next fall.
Crown Point Bulldogs, they have 2 guys on this offensive line list. The first one is Jeffrey Machete, All-State selection back in 2022. This past year, he was the Phil Enescu Mental Attitude Award winner for the Class 6A. And we keep talking about linemen who had the best rushing numbers, and obviously Crown Point was one of the best teams.
He's well
rushing.
respected, obviously. Again, he plays at the All-State level. I don't think he made it this year, but he was still all-conference selection. And what sticks out to me the most is, again, the Mental Attitude Award. I think that's given to somebody playing in each respective class's state championship game, and obviously it speaks volumes of how well respected he is in the community. I believe kind of the requirements for this award is, again, an impact in the community, in the classroom, of course, on the field. And again, it's kind of, I think, given to you. Again, they ask the coaches and all, it's all kind of, it doesn't get much bigger than this for Machete. And again, it speaks volumes. And again, he's still a very good player for this team. And again, he deserves all the praise he's getting currently. So
our third O-lineman and our second Bulldog is going to be Paul Clark. Led the explosive offense with Machete, who we just talked about, but standing in at 6'4", 265 pounds. Buffalo commit, all-conference and all-state selection this year. Also one of the best wrestlers, not just in the state, but in the country, you could say, at his weight class. You would just watch them at the Carnahan Invitational. I feel like they're going to have to build a statue for the Clark brothers. But for Paul, we'll talk about right now, Paul Clark, an exceptional player, another guy who came into this year with a lot of hype. A lot of people in that Crown Point community knew the type of player he is. And, just as impressive as it gets on the line.
Yeah, dude, I don't know what those speaking on both
where they
the Clarks,
eat, where they drink,
something's in the water in that Clark household, man. I know they got some work coming up, but, those...
They must eat their spinach.
Wheaties, man, watch a bit, obviously watch a bit of Popeye, but I don't know what those two are better at in terms of sports, but nonetheless, Paul, again, imposing force. Again, you mentioned the next level frame, and again, he anchored things down for that O-line, of course, an all-state selection. Again, he was, I think, typically voted as a team captain week by week. Again, a lot of respect on that team. And again, Buffalo's getting a good one with that Clark package deal. I'm excited to see, again, what they do in the future. But right now, he's obviously doing some things in wrestling. I know I watched both the Clark brothers, again, wrestle in the championship rounds of the Carnahan Invitational and pin both their guys. It's those two are something else, to say the least.
Our fourth lineman is going to be Aiden Olage, one of the top centers in the area, first team all-conference in 2023, 2-sport athlete. We kind of mentioned him a little bit on our honorable mention with his teammate, but another guy who really just stepped up when he needed to. And being a center is very hard. Snapping that football is not easy at all. He did it pretty good.
No, and then worrying about the guy in front of you, of course.
Yeah.
But a lot of coaches got back to us. Again, Alage was called, by one as one of the best centers they played all year. I think the best center he played all year. And then I actually kind of picked the brain of a Hobart coach and RSN's own Isaiah Gransberry, kind of what his thoughts were on Aiden Alage, and it was nothing but praise for this kid. It's he definitely had a fantastic year, and again, he anchored one of the most potent offenses in the area. So shout out to Alage for sure.
Our fifth and final O lineman will be Ben Novak, next level frame as he stands at 6'6". He's the lone sophomore on the first team, is also first team all conference and all state this year, and he actually has an offer from Western Michigan as a sophomore. This kid's got a lot of bright and potential in front of him.
Yeah, for sure. It's again, when we were talking to coaches, Chris Skinner, Andrean's head coach, he said if there was kind of a bright spot in this kind of a big turnover, a lot of turnover that this offense went through this year, Ben Novak was the bright spot. He offered something again. He offered a lot of protection at that, but he can move very well at the 6'6" frame. Don't let that fool you. And again, coaches are already starting to see that at the D1 levels, and I'm expecting big things for this kid.
Yeah. And our utility player, who is on our first team list, is going to be Aiden Silver, the quarterback out of River Forest. Although he was the quarterback, this man could do it with his legs as well. He had over 1,000 passing and rushing yards, 27 total touchdowns. Also played defense. He had 94 total tackles and 2 interceptions. He led the team in passing yards, rushing yards, and total touchdowns. He was actually second in total tackles and tied for the lead in interceptions. And he was also the main kickoff and punt return guy and the punter as well.
I wonder if he drove him to the game as well. He did just about everything, dude.
He led River Forest to their 5th straight winning season, but usually the quarterback only plays one position. Usually no one touches him. Usually he wears a red jersey in practice. I have a feeling Aiden Silver did not wear that red jersey. That kid probably was everywhere in practice. Coach is probably calling Aiden, hey, we need you at quarterback for these drills. Aiden, we need you at secondary for these drills. So that's the question. If you're a quarterback,
that's a great point.
Who plays defense, who plays special? So when you're playing, your scrimmages in practice, who takes his spot? Because he's supposed to play. He's a starter. Who's taking his spot? Nevertheless, it's impressive as it gets to see a quarterback play as many positions as he did at the rate and at the effectiveness he did.
Yeah, he's positionless. Again, he's only a junior. I'm expecting a lot of things from him coming 2024. Again, hopefully he doesn't take up any more roles than he probably has now. He seems like he has a lot on his plate. I don't know. It doesn't look like he comes off the field that much. I think he at least comes off for kickoffs. I didn't have any kickoff stats on him. Yeah. He's kicking the ball to them. He still returns kicks. But it's this guy's a gamer, man. He loves the game. Obviously, he sees plenty of it, and it's again, even at the next level, if he chooses to go that route, he could offer you just about anything you may ask him to.
Let's move to defense now. We'll go with the linemen. We got 4 of them. The first one is Adam Campfor, 64 total tackles, 6 of those for a loss, including 4 sacks. A 2-year starter. He's only a junior. Comes in at 6'1" and 300 pounds. Pure strength. He was a 2023 5A junior all-state selection. And another guy, a lot of potential and a bright future ahead of him and a great junior year for Adam Campfor.
It's a long line of Maryville Pirates. Yeah. He's coming up. From what I saw, it was tough. We're going to get into a Maryville D lineman up next. That, of course, we're going to all know his name. But Campfor, he really had a solid season this year, and he was arguably the most productive D lineman. Of course, we talked about James Veal actually winning that team lineman MVP. But Campfor, again, he's watching his film was fun. He sheds blocks like no other. Again, he's a big dude, just again pure strength, just a wrecking ball. And again, he's a nightmare for your offensive coordinators, and he's going to do it again next year. I just know it. So we're excited to see again how he takes this next step. Again, we got a lot of juniors on this list. I kind of keep saying we're excited to see how they do next year, but it's true. Again, this stuff matters for them, and they want to find their name on this list next year, I bet.
Another Pirate you kind of alluded to, Terrell Elmore makes the list. 24 total tackles, 9 for loss, 2.5 sacks, including 3 blocked field goals. Now, he didn't play the whole season as well, so that's why those numbers are a little bit condensed, but nevertheless, he's a 2-time all-state selection. In fact, he was a top 50 team in 2023, committed to Eastern Michigan, but another guy who we talked about every week because he was a game changer on defense.
Completely, and going off of that, again, asking coaches, I'm going to kind of keep things anonymous, but one coach said, he was the one player this year that we completely changed our scheme against. This was, again, and that is a testament to the stats. Again, 24 total tackles, you kind of see that, and it's like, why this guy's first team?
Yeah.
But why would you go at him? Why would you run at him? You want to run completely away from him because he's gonna wreck things up, and it's gonna be a tackle for loss. Which again, he had 9 of them, and it's still 2.5 sacks. Again, the numbers may not be there for your prototypical first-team guy, but it's the impact he has. It's not recorded on the stat sheets, but also 3 blocked field goals. That's fantastic. But one thing I didn't know is I didn't know he wrestled. I found that out. We did a Maryville-Chesterton or last week, I should say, and again, you see a lot of two-sport guys on here that, again, it's a lot of wrestlers too as well. Of course, the Clark brothers and our next T-lineman we're going to talk about, they kind of go hand-in-hand with each other, but it's the reason why they're doing it. They're so athletic, and they could, again, make their names known in plenty different sports. So, again, shout out to all these guys.
Yeah, our next D-lineman comes from Hanover Central. Colin Foy, 70 total tackles, 5.5 for a loss, including 3 sacks. He also started offensive tackle here and there, but he's a 2-time All-State selection. Currently has offers from Marion, Carthage, and Western Illinois, and called one Hanover Central game, and that's all I needed to see. This kid is a beast, and every time they tried to run it up the middle on him, I kid you not, he broke right through the O-line. Like, there was no way of stopping him, and he's a guy, you mentioned another wrestler.
Right.
He's a
very
big, strong dude, and when he gets physical in football on that line, good luck blocking him.
I'm pretty sure that Lafayette game, I think he had a season high 18 tackles.
Oh, it was unbelievable.
And again, it's at the D-line position. You don't linebackers. That's a little bit more understandable. Yeah. Again, you're the kind of the goal of the D-line is to kind of free up spots for the linebacker to kind of make plays either at, behind, or a little bit in front of the line of scrimmage. But Foy, he kind of serves both roles. He doesn't let you get to that second level, and again, it shows whatever he does at the next level, whatever route he goes on, he's going to make an impact, whether that's wrestling or football or neither. It's he's a dude, man. He's a game wrecker, and it was fun to watch him just for that lone game.
Final D lineman here is going to be Seamus Molaski out of Crown Point. 52 total tackles, 13 of those for loss, including 7 sacks. He also had 9 receptions for 151 receiving yards and 5 touchdowns. All-State selection in 2023. He's a 3-sport athlete: football, basketball, and track and field, where he's committed to Purdue on a scholarship. He was a state champion disc thrower. Weird how we're giving this guy all this praise, not for football.
It's
never
like football's a side hustle, man.
Yeah, it is the way he's playing. I mean, he's also a pivotal part on that men's team for Crown Point for basketball.
Having a solid year.
But this guy was all over the football field. I mean, we talk about defense, the way he was able to break through the line. 13 tackles for loss and 7 sacks is ridiculous.
Yep.
But yeah, he can go catch 9 passes for 151 yards and 5 touchdowns. So Seamus Molaski, a guy who can do it, not just in football, not just in basketball, but track and field as well. Had himself a terrific year this year.
Yeah, it's really tough to pick out the best athlete on this Crown Point team. We have a case for about 5 guys, and Molaski's about the best as they come. Again, another state champion in a different sport, but he's he was a beast, man. Again, next level frame, kind of taller dude, bigger guy, but again, he can move. Of course, he can play offense, play that H-back / tight end role, and he benefited well off of that fantastic offensive scheme they got for him. But he made most of his money on the defensive side, and it's it kind of stinks. You don't get to see him play at the next level, but it just shows how much of an athlete he is just in the track and field game. And again, I got to give a shout out to him. Boiler up, man. That's I know he's in basketball now, but I know track's coming up pretty soon, and we'll see if he can repeat. Boiler up, baby. Come on.
Well, we'll go to the linebackers now, and this is probably the most impressive player we had the opportunity to watch all year long. It's Will Clark. The Crown Point Bulldogs, 133 total tackles, 13 tackles for loss, 6 sacks, the leader of that Crown Point defense, committed to Buffalo. He's also a state champion wrestler at 215 pounds. He was a 2023 DAC Defensive MVP. He was top 3 in Indiana Mr. Football. So it's as impressive as it gets. Look, Will Clark, and it's kind of like a guy who, we can go on and on about stats and what he – how many catches or how many tackles he had, but this was a guy who was the nucleus of the defense. We talk about Ehrlich as a nucleus of the offense. Will Clark was the nucleus of this defense and true leader. And when you needed a big play made, it was always Will Clark there in the right spot. It's like he knew what was happening, and he knew what was coming before it even happened. That just tells you the football IQ he possesses, how quick he is, how fast, how smart. And Will Clark is just as impressive as the linebacker that we've seen here in Indiana. I don't know if you have any names that come to mind, but for me personally, Will Clark just blew, I think, everybody out of the water with the way he played. Now, he had a lot of expectations coming into this year, but he exceeded those expectations the way he played, and he was a big part why that defense won that Penn game, very close one. They needed defense, and that Westfield game in overtime. Those were defensive stops that needed to be made, and Will Clark was there to help make those stops.
Yeah, it's my first time really covering sports, but it's tough I think it's gonna be really tough to find somebody as productive as Will Clark is for such a fantastic unit like Crown Point's defense. It's again, we covered a lot of Crown Point games this year, and I had a luckily a big chance to kind of watch him do his thing, and he's got all the intangibles you need. He's quick. Again, he offers decent size. At the 215 range, he's tall. He makes plays all over the field. Again, you need him to drop back into coverage, or you need him to rush the quarterback, which he did a lot. He could do it all, man. And Buffalo, again, getting a good one in that package deal. But you don't see many guys getting, up there for Mr. Football. Again, Drake Bowen, of course, I never really got the chance to cover or play him. Of course, I knew about the impact he was doing, but this is my first, season really going in depth, seeing how these guys, who the players look out for. And again, Will Clark, that was a hell of a season by him and just the whole Crown Point defense, man.
Absolutely.
They got something special going over there. Even though, they got some guys coming back next year. Of course, you want to talk about this year, but don't sleep on them coming up in 2024.
Yeah. Next at linebacker is Nick Johnson, 151 total tackles, 19 for loss. That includes 3 sacks and 5 forced fumbles. He also had 9 receptions for 202 yards and 2 touchdowns. But overall, in the last 2 years combined, he's had 285 total tackles. He has led the area in total tackles for the past 2 years. He also led his team in receiving this year. He's a 2-time All-State selection committed to Valpo, so him and TJ Caldwell should get to know each other pretty well.
Yeah,
but
for sure.
Nick Johnson, the guy who,
awesome.
No matter what the team's results were, it's a guy who we talked about every week just because how much of a game changer he was.
Yeah, he was that Highland defense, just about Highland offense. Again, when things struggled, he made some plays, again, kind of filled that tight end H-back role, but he was super fun to watch.
Yeah.
Again, first, I knew about him coming into this season a little bit. He had, again, very similar number of tackles, last year, and he's bettered that this year. It's Valpo's getting a great one, and Johnson, again, he's a gamer. He flies around the field, does everything you really need to at the linebacker position. Again, similar to Will Clark, he's a dog, to say the least. So shout out to Valpo, and again, shout out to Nick Johnson. They're getting a good one.
Our final linebacker, Darius Beeson. He was a beast as he had 146 total tackles, 17 for loss, 6 sacks, and 2 fumble recoveries. He also started out on the offensive line. He only had 18 tackles last year, so he had over 100 and about 30 more tackles this year. Two-sport athlete.
Crazy.
And we keep talking about how these guys have really upped their game and played at a different level. And Darius Beeson, I think, is a prime example of that.
Yeah, it's great. That's probably one of the biggest jumps I've seen all year. Looking at these guys, again, 18 tackles. They throw you in, and you're second on the tackle leaderboard to a sure tackler and Nick Johnson. If it wasn't Aiden Silver making a tackle, it was Darius Beeson. They made a lot of them. And again, River Forest, I believe he's a senior now, and they're going to miss him, but I think they'll be all right. But Beeson, again, those are fantastic stats, and there's a reason he's on this first team for sure.
Let's move to the DBs now. It's going to be Freddie Brown to lead off this one. 81 total tackles, 7 for loss, 10 sacks, including 2 blocked field goals. A 2023 5A junior all-state selection, currently a 3-star safety, getting offers from Memphis, Central Michigan, and Western Michigan. Another guy who we talked about, if you're going to win a game, Freddie Brown's going to have to be there to make some plays, and he did this year.
Yeah, he's a dog, man. It's funny. He's a 3-star safety, but he made All-State. They had him listed as a linebacker. So what Morton kind of does, again, watching a little bit of film, I can't speak on all this, but he walks up a lot. Again, he's technically a safety, but he kind of fills that rover role. He could walk up to the line of scrimmage, and obviously with 10 sacks this year, he can get to the quarterback. He's quick. Again, a 200-pound safety, that's a pretty big boy at the safety position. Yeah. Again, I'm sure that's just about all muscle and just athleticism what he's got over there. But he could play about anywhere. And again, I kind of want to see what they do next year. They may have a hole a little bit at the running back position. I know he logged a couple carries for Morton this year.
Yeah.
I could totally see this dude again making a big impact on the offensive side and the defensive side. But again, coaches are seeing that. Again, he's getting some decent offers, and I'm only expecting more next year.
Next for the DBs comes out of Maryville, Trey Stevens, 73 total tackles, 12 for loss, including 2 forced fumbles. He also had 314 rushing yards and 6 total touchdowns. Now, I got to remember, he didn't play until week 3, so for him to have those stats is impressive. 2-time All-State selection, currently stands as a 2-star recruit. This was another guy, you want to talk about the nucleus of a defense, a guy who stepped up when he needed to make plays. That's Trey Stevens. I mean, that's his middle name, making plays.
Right.
You go back to that Valpo game in regionals, he's the one who made that stop in the end zone.
Play of the year, man.
Yeah, play of the year that helped the Pirates go to semi-state. And he's a guy who I believe he also had the flu game this year.
That's right.
So for Trey Stevens, he's a guy who can play both sides of the football. But when it comes to defense, he was making those big-time plays when you needed it.
Yeah, they're going to miss him a lot over there in Maryville, but he's a dog. Again, that was a fantastic play against Valparaiso. Again, not to negate anything else he did prior or after that. But yeah, I mean, again, playing 2 ways in the deck, that's a tall ask of anybody, and to do it at his level is even a taller ask. And again, 2-time All-State. You don't see many guys playing at that level twice and getting the recognition they do. And Trey Stevens, again, I think he's gotten a couple offers, but I think coaches are starting to realize the impact he has on both sides of the ball, and they can play him just about anywhere. So
yeah. Next is Tyler Torbenson, 101 total tackles, 15 for loss, 3 sacks, including 41 receptions for 514 receiving yards and 8 touchdowns. He's a 4-year starter. He was a 3-year team captain, a 2023 3A senior all-state selection. Just another guy who's playing both sides of the football as good as you can. And for him, he was huge. I mean, 15 tackles for loss. That's really impressive from the DB position.
Yeah, again, he offers good size to where they can kind of walk him up to the line of scrimmage, and he can make plays up there. Again, he was all over the place. And again, another Boone Grove guy that really led them to a very big bounce back year. Again, I want to say they only had 2 wins, 2 wins a year ago, and then they definitely bettered that number by a lot. And it's, again, for a player like that, again, a 4-year starter, he probably meant so much to that program and that coaching staff. So it stings to say goodbye to Torpson, but again, he is such a big piece. Again, he's seen it all for that Boone Grove program a little bit. Again, 4 years ago, we're not talking about Boone Grove getting an all-turf field with the cool lights and that fantastic facility they got there. It's definitely bittersweet for Torpson to kind of walk out in that way. And again, we got to give him his flowers for that total impact he had in his career as a Wolf.
The final DB on our first team list is going to be Hayden DeMarco, 110 total tackles, 5 of them for loss, 3 sacks, including 379 kickoff return yards. Only 5'8", but man, that kid can tackle for his size. An all-conference nod as well, and also is a talented wrestler.
He's
but
very solid.
Hayden DeMarco, I mean, you look at it, 5'8", 140. You don't expect to make 110 tackles and 5 of them for loss. So he was as impressive for this football season, and he played a huge role in defense.
No, he's not afraid of contact. Again, it may be deceiving. 140 pounds, 5'8", at the DB position. You're licking your chops if you're running back to try and run through this guy. And DeMarco, he's such an effective tackler. Again, he's got that wrestling background. He's a very, very talented wrestler. I've been to a couple of Chesterton meets already, and he I don't know if he's lost yet. If so, it's been by very minimal. He's tough, man. He's a sure tackler. He's an ankle biter is what we kind of call him. He goes for your legs. He shoots, and he's taking you down every time. He loves contact, and he doesn't want his size to deceive him. And I think he's starting to let that down. So.
Now for our utility player on the first team, it's going to be Lane Zander. 32 receptions, 679 receiving yards. He also had 52 tackles, 2 interceptions. He also had over 700 kickoff plus punt return yards and 15 total touchdowns. He tripled his all-purpose yardage from last year. He was voted as the team MVP. He also broke 2 single-season records in receiving yards and kickoff returns for touchdowns. And that is the definition of a utility player.
Definitely a lot of praise from KVU head coach Kirk Kennedy. This yeah, this guy changes games, and he's got track speed. Again, his film was super fun to watch. I only watched a little bit of it, but it was just about all I needed to see. I know what this kid has to offer. He's quick. He could beat you, again, through the air, on the ground, through a kickoff, through a punt return. And, I mean, he did it all for the KV Cougars this past fall, and it's – again, I'm always looking forward. Again, we talk about these guys now, but come a couple years down the line, hey, I remember when I talked about this kid on the RSN All Area Show in 2023. It's no matter what route all these guys go, it's going to be fun to see what follows them up in the future.
Let's move to special teams for the first team. We'll start with the kicker. I'm going to give this one to kicker/punter, Jack Doty. 5 of 6 on PATs, 4 of 7 on field goals. His longest was a 42-yarder. He also had 17 kickoffs, which 7 of them were touchbacks. He had the game winner in Week 1 against the 4A sectional champs in New Prairie. And why I say a punter, he had 10 punts down to inside the 20-yard line.
That was a nice stat they provided.
Now,
that's pretty impressive.
We covered the Valpo and LaPorte game and the Crown Point and LaPorte game, and there was a lot of punting for LaPorte. He was a beast, man. I mean, I tell you, this kid was awesome to watch. Like, he had a leg, and if it weren't for him, I feel like more points would have been scored on the opposition. But Jack Doty's boot was keeping, the defense starting, kind of in their own side of the field, and it was just impressive for me. And I was on you about this one.
You made sure to include this.
I wanted Jack Doty. I watched him. I had the POV. I saw him play, and I'm like, that kid can kick. And I think Jack Doty definitely is worthy of this list.
Enough.
For punter, Drayden Wilcox, he had 56 kickoffs. He averages 50 yards per kickoff. He had 32 punts where they averaged 34.5 yards per punt. He was 34 of 35 on PATs and 6 of 8 on field goals. He was also the DAC most valuable punter. That'll give you our punting nod. And, of course, our long snapper. You mentioned this one. We have a first-team long snapper, Luke Granzow, highly touted long snapper recruit, committed to Air Force.
That's awesome.
I'll ask you a question because you did make this list. What made you want to include a long snapper?
Well, I mean, again, obviously he's a touted recruit.
Where did that start from? Have you heard? You've heard about him, I assume. Before.
Yeah. Going into this year, and there's no stats to measure long snapper effectiveness or anything. But I wanted to give Grasnow his flowers. Obviously, going to a D1 program like Air Force, that's not easy to do. And I know he's. Again, I've kind of surfed a couple of these kids, social media pages and kind of see what coaches are saying or what are they rating these kids. And Granzow, he's a highly rated recruit. So obviously he's doing plenty of things right at the long snapper position. And Hobart as a whole, again, they have a very solid special teams unit. Of course, we talked about Xander Langford, who I also believe is starting to become kind of a touted recruit at the punter position, kicker position. It's yeah, you mentioned special teams third of the game, and again, it doesn't get better than these guys in the area. So, again, got to give shout out to the long snappers. Couldn't find anybody else as touted as Granzow, but I had to give the flowers to the one most deserving, in my opinion.
Yeah, and that's it for our first team selection list. I mean, including the honorable mention, the second team and the first team, at least 80 kids probably on this list around there.
It was a decent. I kind of lost count by the time midway through second team, but
it's incredible.
It shows how much talent's in the area. Again, it was super fun. Kind of all of us really, I'd say, kind of transcribing this list, and it's again, a lot of these guys. Again, I'm expecting if we do this again next year, which I assume we will, it's a lot of duplicates, a lot of copy these notes over for next year. I'd say. So
whether you made the honorable mention, the second team or first team, you have so much to be proud about. Congratulations to everybody that was on this list and that we had the opportunity to talk about here today on the RSN All Area Football Show. You guys deserve your flowers, deserve your credit. You guys are going out there every day playing football. Mike, you understand the grind it takes to play Friday Night Lights. So if there's anybody that knows and understands the respect and recognition these kids deserve, it's you. It's the one who made this list. So
I wouldn't say completely.
You did
completely.
You did an amazing job on
Thank
this.
you.
I think that credit all goes to you, all the stats you pulled out, all the film you've watched, and just being able to really make those tough decisions of who goes where. I mean, that's an impressive job on your part. And I feel like we're going to be maybe calling you a scout one day.
We'll see.
The way you were able to make this list.
Now that you say that, any of the backlash I get, put it right towards me. But
oh, no.
I did kind of want to say again, if we kind of did miss you, if you're playing next year, or if you're a senior, don't let this Don't let this kind of get to you. Again, if you're playing next year, if you're doing anything, let this be a chip on your shoulder for how you approach anything in the coming years, whether that's a football season, whether that's your freshman year of college, just going through classes. Again, don't let this not being named to this define you and anything. I mean, use it as ammo to pop on it next year. But it's been fun, man. Again, a lot of these kids, they deserve flowers, and it's why, again, I pitched the idea. I wanted to do something like this, and Chris, of course, our executive producers, go all for it, and now here we are. So,
yeah, absolutely, it's a great point you made up. And as we conclude this show, do you have any final words? I don't know if I think this is probably our last football show of the year,
dude. I think so.
I know we haven't done one since State with Crown Point and Ben Davis right before Thanksgiving.
Post show.
It's almost a month.
Yeah,
we did a basketball show.
Yeah,
but this is probably going to be our last football show. It's kind of right before this whole holiday season going on, kind of like putting a bow on what has been one incredible football season.
Yeah, it's been a hell of a season, to say the least. I don't want to say this is kind of a wrap up on football coverage.
No,
I know our off-season
we'll
audience,
still post
our off-season audience, if there's such thing as an off-season. I know Chris and I have talked about plenty of things to do in the upcoming future, and we know the audience, of course, won't ever really go away when we're talking about football. But I mean, just for us, man. I mean, you personally, it's tough.
It's been a ride, man.
It's tough to find another a host. No, I'm serious. I mean, a host that could. It'll be as fun as this, man. It's
been fun, man.
It's been 3 months of every Thursday usually doing this. I know this is going to be on not our typical schedule, but it was a fun ride, man. It was a fun season, to say the least. And again, plenty of thanks, of course. I mean, I don't want to steal the words out your mouth, but Chris Ramirez, our executive producer, just letting us kind of be the two guys that kind of break the news to our audience. Every Thursday or whatever day it may be.
Yeah.
It was a fun ride, man.
No, absolutely. And a big thank you to you, the viewers, for all your continuous support throughout the year and throughout the season. Without you guys, this is not possible. We do this for you so you can watch whoever you want to watch, whether it's family, whether it's a friend, whether it's somebody you know of or somebody you just want to because you're an avid football fan.
Right.
We do this because of you guys. And, we've seen the comments every week on our Facebooks, and we love it, and we love how engaged people are, although sometimes they may not like us. It's okay. We're likable people, we think. But
can't please everybody.
No, but we like that you guys are entertained and you're engaged and you care, because we care too. And we are so happy that we have so engaging viewers and engaging fans like you here in Northwest Indiana. And it's been a pleasure this football season. Although, like Mike said, there's no off-season football in high school football in Northwest Indiana. We'll be posting continuous football clips throughout the year. And before you know it, it's going to be next football season, 2024. But that's going to do it all for us here on the RSN All Area Football Show. A big thank you to our executive producer, Chris Ramirez, our operations manager, Rich Castile, and our coordinating producer, Zach Miller. Of course, a big thank you to our other Zach Zanelli.
Did it all year, man.
For our producer. Yeah, he did it all year. Not just today's show, not just the kickoff shows, but Region Football Weekly for the main part that we were live every Thursday. He was also a big part in training with the tribe as well. Definitely. So he's been the backbone of all the shows, of all the football content.
And a smorgasbord of other stuff, too.
Yeah, absolutely. All of our football content. You've seen football-wise, it was all Zach Zanelli is pretty much behind it all. Yeah. And some of the stuff you'll be seeing with whether it's writing in the region, whether it's wrestling, whether it's basketball, Zach Zanelli, the Mr. Utility, is going to be there helping out. Yeah. And, of course, Mike Dewan will be there as well. Zach Miller, coordinating producer, does a great job. And everybody at RSN does a great job. Great people that love to do what they do. And it's fun to work with all these people. But for the RSN All Area Football Show, and Zach, Mike, and myself, we hope you have a great day. And we'll see you soon. But you're watching us on the Region Sports Network, the only game in town.